Watch brand collaborations with brands from other fields is always tricky. Watch brand collaborations with automotive brands, motorbike or car, have tended to be terrible. Most of them suck. Breitling's collaboration with Bentley probably fell into that second category. Breitling's new collaboration with Triumph doesn't. It looks brilliant. Hi, welcome back to Not So Obvious Watches. I'm Pete McConville. I'm not doing a critique or a review or a hot take necessarily on the new Breitling Top Time Triumph today, although I am obviously talking about that watch, but I'm not going to get into the super details. If you do want to know that stuff, go Google it. There's plenty of other people covering it. What I really want to touch on today is how this watch has worked as a collaboration, and why I think this watch is a great example of how a watch brand and some other brand can collaborate. Okay, so the first thing in any collaboration is that there has to be an alignment between the brands, that the love of your life can't be totally out of your league and hanging with a different crowd. Because that's exactly what happened with the Breitling and Bentley kind of relationship. Yeah, if you're going to collaborate with a brand, you really want to be talking to where the Venn diagrams cross over. So you want to be talking to basically the same sort of people, and you want to be saying the same sorts of things to those people. Going back to Bentley and Breitling, you were talking to completely different people. The kind of people who were buying a $500,000 Bentley were not the people buying a $5,000, maybe $10,000 Breitling. Just totally different crowds. Also, the things that Bentley says are fundamentally different to the things that Breitling says. Bentley says prestige, success, hierarchy, status, exclusivity, behind the velvet rope where no one else is allowed to go. Breitling is making this big push about being inclusive and accessible and having fun and being casual and everything that Bentley isn't. As a tie-up, they're just, not only are they talking to different people, but they're saying fundamentally different things. That is not true when you look at Triumph and Breitling. They're talking to basically the same people. The kind of people who are going to be spending $10,000 to $25,000, maybe $30,000 on a motorcycle are exactly the sort of people who are thinking they might spend $5,000, $10,000 on a Breitling watch. On top of that, the things that both Breitling and Triumph are saying to those people really align. They're saying, have fun, enjoy yourself. You only live once. This is about pleasure and excitement, not about dressing up and showing other people how much money you make. Their stories are very similar and they align quite nicely. Their histories kind of align. And what they're trying to get the wearers or the users of their products to do is very similar. For that reason, Bentley and Breitling never worked. But Triumph and Breitling, match made in heaven. A sign of a good relationship is some reciprocity. You know, you could always, clearly, Breitling made watches with Bentley motifs, but I don't recall Bentley ever making a Breitling special version. That just wouldn't have made sense. On the other hand, it is really interesting to see here that what we have is a Breitling that has Triumph motifs at the same time that we have a Triumph that has Breitling motifs put through it. That reciprocity, that idea that each brand is happy to show that collaboration is a really great sign that you've got your brand alignment right. Okay, so the second thing that I think marks out a great collaboration is that the collaboration, the aspects of the watch that result from that are the cream, not the cake. What do I mean by that? I think a great collaboration watch at its core still has to make sense as a product of the watch brand. Again, I'll sort of illustrate this via the negative. In order to drag Breitling up to be something that a Bentley owner might buy, they had to go stick tourbillons and things in it, which is really un-Breitling. It just made the whole watch kind of discordant with the rest of the collection. Counter that with what we see here with Breitling having the Breitling for Triumph, Breitling with Triumph collaboration. That Triumph Top Time just slides straight into the general, the normal, the core Breitling collection like a hand in a glove. It just take all the Triumph motifs off it, and it could still just be a plain old everyday Breitling Top Time. As I say, it just looks like a Breitling product. And I think that gives the collaboration a really solid basis to build from. It gives it a really solid foundation. It doesn't make the watch feel contrived and out of place and like some sort of confection to drag in people that you wouldn't normally see. And that's why, as I said, that collaboration is just the cream on a Breitling cake. Okay, so far I haven't really spoken about the watch at all, but now I'll talk about it a little bit. As I said earlier, the collaboration needs to be the cream on the cake, but fundamentally it doesn't matter how good the cream is. If the cake is horrible, the collaboration doesn't work. I don't think that's a problem here. I think that this watch is incredible. It is really good looking. I think its trick is it has taken the best of three periods in time and put them together to create something that's really wonderful and contemporary and interesting. The case shape and the pushers and the kind of general layout is very mid to late 60s kind of look. So that's the case shape and layout. But then you move to the more sort of, I'll call them squircles, those squared off circles or circled off squares, whichever way you want to go, sub-registers. Drag the watch forward into a slightly different period. They're more early to mid 70s look. They were sort of starting to appear late 60s, but more a 70s vibe. Then you take the color scheme that's overlaid on that. Icy metallic blue, steel and blacked out chrome. That is so 90s kind of resto mod from the car world that it could be a resto modded car. That's that look. And that look, that reason, that's probably why as a color scheme it works so well on the motorbike. So what that means is what Breitling have ended up with is the best of the mid to late 60s, the best of some of the early 70s stuff, the best of some of the 90s, 2000s ideas about color, brought that together and then created a really contemporary integration of ideas from the past. And that's one of the reasons why I really love this watch. I was always a bit cold on the previous Breitling Sprint, the recreation of the Zorro dial. Great looking watch, don't get me wrong, but it was merely a recreation of some previous designer's ideas. There wasn't a lot of sort of new ideas in that watch. There were no new ideas in that watch. Whereas this watch, whilst the components have been brought from the past, the integration and the combination of those is all new. So even though there are aspects of this watch which are clearly drawn from previous times, this watch at this time represents a unique integration. And that's why I think this watch is particularly special. And I just think they nailed it. Okay, now this watch is not perfect. There's really 4 issues around this watch. One of which I think is fairly ridiculous. One is just kind of funny. And 2 are kind of real. So the one that's a bit stupid is there's some people getting weird about the color scheme. A, thinking it's a Rolex ripoff, or B, thinking it's a Patek ripoff. Primarily that's because people are looking for things to be Patek or to be Rolex ripoffs. They kind of want that to be the case. And because they want that to be the case, they see that when they look at watches that use, God forbid, the color blue, God forbid, the color orange. It's just, it's an unfortunate byproduct of a lot of people in the watch hobby only being in the watch hobby and particularly only looking at their brands often and not having a sense of what's going on in the larger world. Give you some examples. For one, a lot of people are saying that this watch color is a response to the very famous Tiffany blue 5711 from late last year. They're ignoring the fact that that was 10 weeks ago. So I think you're giving Breitling far too much credit, and Triumph probably, to say that they could see that, see its success, design a watch, build a watch, get the media done, and build a motorbike and get the media done for that, and coordinate it and get it released over the Christmas New Year period. As I said, I think you're giving Breitling and Triumph too much credit there. But also, a lot of the people saying that clearly didn't know that last year, well before the Tiffany 5711 imbroglio, that Breitling had already used this product, this color. They put out a chronomat in exactly this color about 6 months ago. There's an example of how people think they see copying, but that's because they don't, they're so mired in their own brands, they don't know what's going on in other areas. They don't know the history of the brand they're critiquing. And I think you see that a lot going on here. The other issue is people think that the watch industry is the only industry, that the watch industry is the only place that design occurs. Anyone who's involved in cars or automotive work, which many of the designers at Breitling clearly are, would know that this is a well-established, good-looking color scheme that is perfect for the use in this kind of automotive collab. The second complaint, and this one I don't think is stupid, but I just find it really funny. There's been some people who they see that Triumph T on the dial of the Breitling, and it reminds them of men's underwear. I'm reminded of those visual illusions where, you know, some people see two people kissing, other people see a vase. Maybe you see the vase, but if I tell you I see two people kissing, you can force yourself to see that. But then as soon as they stop whispering in your ear that there's two people kissing, you snap back to it's a vase, it's whatever you see. Personally, I'm that person who I don't see men's underwear in that little logo. You tell me it's there, I can force myself to see it. But then as soon as you've gone and that voice isn't in my ear anymore, it just snaps back to being a Triumph T. Maybe I'm just not obsessed about men's underwear enough. Maybe this is just a watch not for people who are obsessed with men's underwear. Okay, so let's get into the last two criticisms of this watch, both of which I share. One of which is I actually do really take on board. The one that I'm particularly concerned about is 30 meters water resistance. Now, on one level, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to be diving, and no one's going to be diving or swimming with this watch. It's not that kind of thing. But in 2021, with the science and engineering we have available to us, certainly with the science and engineering that Breitling has available to them, making a watch like this with 100 meters water resistance is not a challenge. And it is something that we as watch enthusiasts like to see. I can understand you want to make it a bit more casual. You don't want to go for like screw down pushes and crowns. That's fine. In fact, I'm on board. Don't give a watch like this screw down pushes and crowns. You would ruin it. But again, we have the technology today to make a watch which is waterproof, or water resistant, I should say, to 100 meters without any of that kerfuffle of screwing stuff down. Breitling should have done that here. The other criticism of this watch, which I think does have some legs, is that it's too expensive. I'm not necessarily sure it's too expensive, but one thing I will say, it is very expensive for its specs. Now, if you line it up against something like the Tudor Black Bay chronograph, for example, which has got a really interesting paradox. So one, they both cost very similar amounts. They're within a few $100s of each other. However, the Tudor gives you 200 meters water resistance, whereas the Breitling gives you 30 meters. The Tudor comes on a bracelet. The Breitling comes on a strap. The Tudor, paradoxically, has a variant of the Breitling in-house chronograph movement with a whole bunch of really modern tech involved. The Breitling, on the other hand, is giving you a chronometer grade, yes, variant of a Valjoux 7730, which is not really equivalent. Look, let's be honest, not as good as the Breitling derived movement that Tudor is using. So from a purely bang for buck, dollar per spec value or spec per dollar value, this watch sucks. Now, personally, that's not a massive issue for me because I tend not to value specs as much, and I place a lot more value in the design area, the way the watch looks. And I think this watch just looks so much better than the Tudor. But I also realize I'm kind of out there on my own. There's a lot of people who really live and die by that value for money, sort of, what do we call it, bang for bucks calculation. And for those people, this watch is awful. And I get it. I can't defend the watch on that basis. If that's a big thing for you, then this watch is just not for you. Okay, so that's it. That's my take on this Breitling Triumph collaboration that's come together with this Top Time chronograph. I love this watch. I love this collaboration. I think it works on so many levels. It's not perfect. I think that for me, I would have loved a little bit more water resistance. And even though I think it would have been a more compelling product to the market if it had either been a little bit cheaper or if it had come with a Breitling in-house movement. As I said, that's not so important for me, but I recognize that that's going to be an issue in the marketplace. What do you guys think? Do you think I've got this completely wrong? Do you think this is not a marriage made in heaven? Do you think that they haven't implemented this particularly well? Do you think the watch looks awful? Tell me in the comments below. Or on the other hand, I should open the idea up that you might actually agree with me. Yeah, tell me in the comments below. I've been Pete McConville. This has been Not So Obvious Watches. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see more of each other. Bye.